So joining me now is Dr. Pam Marrone. Dr. Marrone is an award-winning and well-recognized leader in the agricultural biologicals industry. Over her career, she has founded and run several successful biological-focused companies that have developed and brought numerous products to market. She now serves as the co-founder and executive chair of the Invasive Species Corporation and the associated nonprofit Invasive Species Research Institute, which is formed to deploy biologicals for control of invasive species in water, forestry, and agriculture. That is a lot. Well, welcome, Pam, and thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
And it's great to be here again with you, talking about biologicals.
Excellent. Let's do it. That's why I got you here. I've had you on my group online there in the academy to talk about biologicals and was just fascinated and wanted to share with more growers. So my summary of your career and achievements, I'm sure, did not do justice to all that you've accomplished in your career, not by a long shot, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your background, the companies you've been involved with, and what you're focused on now. So can you tell the listener how you got interested in the field of biologicals, how that led to you founding 3 highly successful companies, and what are you working on now?
Well, I got interested in entomology and biocontrol at a very early age. And growing up in rural Connecticut on a 40-acre mini farm, so fell in love with nature and learned actually about biocontrol from my father, who used BT, the first ever commercialized bioinsecticide, and then have spent my entire 30 plus years career with teams that are screening microbes, looking for natural products that can control pests and increase crop growth. So Invasive Species Corporation is my 4th company. And just can't stop. There's still so much biodiversity out there to deploy, and still so many big problems to solve.
Through talking about your background and what you're working on, we've touched on biologicals a little bit, but you mentioned Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, which is, why don't you tell the grower, that's one of the original gangsters of biological control. What do we need to know about that? That's one we should all know about.
Well, BT is a bacterium that produces proteins that kill insects when they feed on it. And it was more than 70 years ago discovered and commercialized, and still on the market today, still used heavily by growers everywhere. And because it has a novel mode of action and resistance hasn't developed to it as a sprayable form. That's different with genetically engineered crops with BT protein. And so it's still a stalwart of IPM programs where you can rotate it with chemicals that are single site of action and delay the development of resistance. So that's why it's used.
Yeah, and it's you can buy it at your local garden centers. It's everywhere, literally.
Efficacious. Yep.
Great. So speaking about biologicals and using BT as kind of the example to start with, it's more than just bacteria that we're talking about. What do we mean when we use the term biological? And are there other terms that are used in the industry to describe these types of products?
Yeah, you'll hear a number of terms. You'll hear biologicals, which is broad over biocontrol, biopesticides, biostimulants, which reduce crop stress and increase crop growth, and bionutrients, which actually provide crop nutrition. So biologicals is the broad category. Then you get down to pest management, and you're talking about biocontrol, bioprotection, or biopesticides are the terms. And as I mentioned, then biostimulants and bionutrients. Yeah.
This brings me to the next thing, because you mentioned that you can find different biologicals and they have different, you mentioned and alluded a little to the modes of action. Some are biostimulants, some are actually competing with other pathogens or microbes. What are the types, and let's think about Vineyard related products here for the sake of this discussion, but what are the types of modes of action? And if you want to use examples of products that are commercially available, that's fine too.
Yeah, so let's use the microbial category. So you've got your bacillus products and other non-bacillus microorganisms. They could be Pseudomonas or Streptomyces. There's one from that's Novozymes has. And so typically they would compete on the leaf surface or on the roots with the pathogen. So they can be competitive exclusion and just form a barrier and keep away the pathogen. Or they can produce compounds, natural compounds that inhibit those. And number three, they can induce immunity in the plant through systemic acquired resistance or induced systemic resistance. These are ways to turn on the plant's immune system. So three ways: competition, producing natural compounds that inhibit them, and then boosting the plant's immune system are the typical ways that microbes will help with pathogen control. Now, for pests, you can see products. Certus has some that are fungi that actually infect and kill the fungi that actually have to infect the pest, and then it'll die after infection. Marrone Bios have products that are, instead of infecting, actually produce compounds that stop the growth of feeding through or reproduction based on the natural compounds. So
Okay.
those are major ways for microbes. Now, if you look at biochemicals, which are natural substances, often they can desiccate the fatty acids, for example. They can, or oils. They can desiccate the crops. Desiccate the pest's cuticle, or desiccate the spore, a fungus spore. So they can act as desiccants often and barriers to the pathogen.
Is there anything that can decrease the efficacy of these biologicals? Specific examples?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, at Marrone Bio, we would do like 20, 30 different adjuvants, and you could see amazing variability of the adjuvants in their effect on efficacy of some of the microbial products. And so it's always great to read the label. And each one has a lot. If you read the label, you'll be amazed at how much information is on there. And generally, it'll tell you some of these incompatibilities. Bacillus is pretty hardy and can be used with most because they have resting spores that are really tough. The fungi, though, like trichoderma and some of those types can be a little bit more incompatible with some fungicides. So again, it's important to read the label. But it's kind of a misnomer that, you got to worry about tank mixing biologicals. Most biologicals are pretty robust in being able to tank mix and certainly rotate. So they're pretty hardy, and but I would look at the labels. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess my thinking is a conventional product has a very specific target pest. And if it's a specific type or classification of fungi, and you're mixing a bacteria with that, the presumption would be that it's not having an effect on the bacteria you're mixing it. But maybe it's a pretty large presumption. But I think that's how growers are approaching the concept of their tank mixes at this.
Well, you could tank mix Serenade or any other bacillus with sulfur any day, and copper. So they're completely compatible, as I said, because the modes of action are through the lipopeptides, the compounds produced by these microbes, as well as the resting spores, the bacillus spores, which are really tough. It takes 30 minutes at 100 degrees to kill a spore, in an autoclave, 60 degrees C or hot, so it's higher than 100, much higher, and to kill these spores. So, copper and sulfur doesn't affect them.